Hey everybody. So in the last episode of Plastic Weekly, it was a roundtable involving Sierra Blair Coyle, Eddie Falk, Will Anglin, and Simon Pardon, and we talked a lot about the new scoring systems from both the IFSC and USA Climbing. If you haven't watched it or listened to it, I guess you should go back to plasticweekly.com and check it out. It was a really good discussion. I loved it. And a really good point that came up when we were talking about scoring systems, brought up by Eddie, was that regardless of what scoring system we use, it's really important that we also have a really good way of communicating that information. And he was talking specifically about how these scoring systems are being changed, usually with the premise that we're trying to make these better scoring systems for spectators that are easier to understand, and that they just improve the experience for people watching the event. And as somebody that commentates for some climbing events, I know it's very difficult for me, even though I'm involved with the event, even though I'm watching it and right there in the building, it can be very tough to follow along with the action. And that's mostly because I don't have a very good memory for stuff like that, and it's just something that's kind of difficult for me to keep track of scores. It's not so much the way it works, it's not the tops, attempts, bonuses, zones, that stuff doesn't confuse me, but it's just a lot of information to keep track of, especially when you have multiple climbers on the wall at a time. So we need to have some way where we can see that information constantly. If you look at a current bouldering competition, and we're going to focus on bouldering because it's still bouldering season. If you look at a current bouldering competition, how often do you get the chance to look at the scores if you're watching the live stream? It's usually in long breaks. So if there's one of those instances where the climbers are resting and it's an opportunity for them to pull the scores up onto the screen, but most often it's after the end of each boulder problem, especially in finals. And that could mean 20 to 30 minutes between opportunities to actually look at the score and understanding what's going on as somebody watching. If you're watching any other sport, generally you can tune in, think of football or golf or NASCAR, whatever it is. Generally when you turn on the TV, there will be all the information you need on the screen right away for you to understand the entire context of the competition or the game so far. In something like hockey or football, one of these team-based games, it's going to show you a clock so you understand how much of the game is left. It's going to show you the score. It's going to show you any special conditions, like if there's currently a power play going on. How many yards to the next, whatever the thing is in football, the next down or whatever. All that stuff is visible on the screen, and that's important for us in climbing. And you see it when you're watching like a YouTube stream. One of the most common questions in the YouTube chat is people just trying to catch up. You tune in and it can be 20 minutes before you get a chance to see how people did on previous rounds. So we need to fix that, and that just means we should be putting the scores on the screen more often, or maybe just constantly. All right. If we're going to do that, I want to quickly reiterate some stuff about screen real estate. And an important thing for me is always making sure that we have climbing on the screen. It sounds obvious, but we stray away from that too often. If there's a climber on the wall or even a climber on the mats, we should be putting the camera on them as much as possible. So if we want to put an emphasis on the climbers, we need to arrange everything else around them. So what are some of the things that we want on the screen? Let's see if I can manage a whiteboard. My writing's terrible, but we're going to give it a go. First one is a clock. I'm really adamant about this. If your stream doesn't have a clock visible all the time, then your stream's probably just a waste of time. Make sure there's a clock on the screen. The other stuff, and whether or not you have them right now or not, is start making way for ads. So it might be 15 or 30-second mid-roll ads, like what we'd call commercials. But for the most part, just overlay stuff as well. So in a couple of recent streams I've done at Blockbuster, in the bottom right-hand corner, we were fading in and out of logos for the hold sponsors. At the Ontario Open, we used an entire row along the bottom of the screen showing the primary sponsors, and then it would fade out to a much longer row of secondary sponsors. Make some space on your screen to always be showing the people that are supporting you and paying for your live stream in most cases. Something else that we'll talk about later is you might want to leave space for things like climber IDs. So when the climber is on the wall, you might have a little bar along the the bottom that says their name. It might say their stats. It might show a picture of them, which would be really cool. I'm sure for something like the Olympics, we would have that, where you've got, Sean McCall, picture of his pretty face, some stats, how many World Cups he's won, maybe how tall he is, maybe his ape index, whatever information we feel is relevant. So we probably want to leave some space for that. And then the final one is scores. So let's start figuring out how we're going to deal with this. Talked about how when you tune in, you want to be able to understand the full context of the competition. So the clock is a really important one. We're going to assume you have a clock on your stream. But after that, what stuff do you need to know about how the climbers are doing? The first one is each climber's individual results so far, right? We want to know, okay, Shauna Coxey, what's your current score at the moment? So it might be, 1 top in 3 attempts, blah, 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 blah. We also want to know how the climbers are doing in regards to each other, right? So we probably want some kind of ordered list that shows where they are in relation to each other. It's also really important that we can see how many problems everybody's climbed so far. That's something that I find really annoying in climbing. When I look at an ordered list of climbers placing so far, let's say in a finals round, you will see somebody placed all the way at the bottom in 6th place with 2 tops. Everybody else has 3 tops, but that person just hasn't climbed that 3rd problem yet. And so it becomes kind of, there's no notation that says, hey, they're in a different condition. They haven't had this chance to catch up yet. That's not present there. And I really don't like that the scores shift so much because of this very natural condition of climbing. And I think it can be confusing for some spectators if they don't realize that, that's just a part of the sport. If you're constantly looking at number of tops, some people get the chance to climb before others. And so people will rocket up to the top the second they achieve something, and everybody else has to catch up as they run through the running order. So if we're going to do that, I want that context to be present so people understand, okay, she only has 2 tops compared to everybody else's 3, but she hasn't even had a chance to get on that 3rd problem yet. And then the last piece of information I'd really like, especially in qualifiers or semifinals, is some kind of notation so that we can see when somebody has locked in a position. So let's say when somebody has achieved a score that guarantees they're going to go from qualifiers to semifinals, I want to know that without having to do the math. That's something that we should just do as a service. Also, if somebody is knocked out of a round, it would also be really cool to know, okay, they don't have a chance anymore, they're out of it, and you can pay attention to who is still in the running. So the first part we'll talk about is results so far, how the climbers are actually doing. And we're going to be talking in the new IFSC scoring method, the top zones attempts. And the first question that comes up with that is this frustrating point they made. We're calling this the TZA. I don't know why this is lowercase, but I'll run with it. So tops, and then zones, and then attempts to top. But attempts to zone, what was previously attempts to bonus, still exists, and if there is a tie running through this, the IFSC is still going to use the attempts to zone as something to break ties. So even though we're like the name implies it's a 3-factor scoring system, it is actually 4, and I don't like the idea that we might leave out that last one and not show it in a score. So I think it's really important that we still show all of the factors, the number of tops you have, the number of zones you have, and then the number of tops or number of attempts to top and number of attempts to zone. We're going to have to put all 4 of those things on the screen. I think it's ridiculous to show a score on the screen and, if there's a tie with these 3 factors, not show the viewers how that tie is being broken. I think that's just like irresponsible, just like bad form. It doesn't, you're not showing the entire, complexity of the match. So first of all, we're going to use all 4 of these factors. There's a couple ways to show these scores. The first one is like pretty standard, and it's what you get with most scoring apps and most scores presented in streams so far. And that's just to show a numerical representation of how somebody's doing. So again, I should have just left it up. But with the TZAA system, you're looking at somebody that achieves 3 tops, and they got 4 zones, and they took 4 attempts to get their tops, and they took 4, yeah, let's say they flashed all the bonuses. So their score right now, 3 tops, 4 zones, and then the relevant attempts. I'm going to call this numerical scoring, okay? So it's just all showing you individual numbers. This is really cool. It means the viewer doesn't have to do any math. They don't have to add up their score in problem 1 and the score in problem 2 and the score in problem 3 and on number 4. We just show them the entire thing so you can immediately see where they stand. Something it doesn't show, though, is how well climbers did on an individual problem, which is probably the most asked question you see when you hop into a live stream. You'll see somebody's mom being like, did, Leanne top number 2? Even when the scores are up on the screen, it often doesn't show the breakdown per problem. The IFSC has used a system in their streams in the past, as recently as Munich. I'm just going to pull it up, where they use a graphical representation like this. So this is a screen grab from the Munich World Cup finals. They use these colored rectangles to represent each problem per person, and it shows you who achieved the top and who only achieved the bonus. So if there's a fully gold rectangle, that means a person topped it. And if you see a rectangle that's white on the top and gold on the bottom, it means they only achieved the bonus on that problem. The gray in the final 2 columns means the climbers haven't gotten to problems 3 and 4 yet. So I really like that system because it lets me see, okay, Yanya flashed both, or didn't flash, but she topped the first and second problem. Akio only topped the first one, did not top or get bonus on the second. If you go down to like Petra Klingler, you can see the bonus on problem 1, but not on number 2, and the reverse for Stasia. I think that's really cool information to have, and I want to know that as a viewer. I want that ability to see what happened on each individual problem, and that's not something you get from the numerical order. But if we look back at it, what these colored rectangles don't show you are, first of all, the number of attempts, or the number of attempts to zone. And they also force you, if that was all that was shown, it would force you to add up the number of gold rectangles, right? So the IFSC you see on the right side of the screen, they also include the numerical scoring on the far right side. You can't really go with just one or the other because each of these methods, just the numerical or just the graphical representation, doesn't show you all the information that you want. So we might want to go with what the IFSC tried, where they have the graphics on one side showing you a problem breakdown, and then the numerical on one side, or we might try and find like a merger of things. So one that I was kind of playing around with was going with the colored rectangles idea, but instead of like horizontal rectangles, more like vertical ones. I don't know why I'm changing color. If we just go with a bunch of vertical rectangles like this, we can start to superimpose numbers onto these to show you, okay, they got the bonus in how many attempts. So in this case, let's say they achieved the bonus only on problem number 1, and it took them 2 tries to get to bonus. And we can like color this in a little bit with my super Art Attack style drawing. Sweet. If I look at that, it says, okay, they managed to get to the bonus, or the zone, sorry, in 2 attempts. And then if we go to this, yeah, we're going to color it in. I haven't drawn or colored anything in probably 20 years. If we see this kind of graphic, we know, okay, cool. So they topped problem number 2. It took them, sorry, these numbers are backwards. I'm such an amateur. How can I get away with this? This should be 3. Yeah, that's a 3. And that's, so I'll make it a 3. Cool. So in this case, they fluffed the problem twice, and then on their 3rd attempt, they got bonus, or zone, and top. I kind of like something like this. It lets me see, okay, it lets me see which problems they got tops on, which problems they got zone on, and how many attempts it took them to get to each part. But the last thing is, it forces me to do some math to put the entire score together, right? So if I did this entire thing, I won't color it in yet, but we'll say 1, 1, 5, 7. When I look at this, it's going to take me a couple seconds for me to actually like put together how well this climber did. I don't know the numerical score yet. I'm going to have to go and say, okay, so they achieved 1, 2, 3 tops. They achieved 4 zones. God, my writing is terrible, like an unemployable doctor. So 3 tops, 4 zones, and it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 attempts to top, 2, 5, 6, 13 attempts. God, I hope that's right. 13 attempts to bonus. So I had to manually do that math if I don't have the written score out for me already. So all this stuff together, I do like this. I think this is really cool, but we still need to have that numerical representation. So a question to ask yourself is, as a viewer, how much do you want to know exactly how the climbers did on each problem? I personally do, so I want to see something like this that gives me the full breakdown. I think it's a relatively elegant way of showing it, the way the IFSC does it, maybe adding in these things. I'd much prefer that than seeing a numerical breakdown of each individual problem. I don't think it looks as nice. It probably takes up more space. I think I like this thing a lot better. So let's just get rid of this. And that's basically us talking about how to represent people's scores. This is a dirty whiteboard. The other thing we needed to talk about was climber standings compared to each other. So all the stuff we just talked about was showing a single climber, right? But that's not good enough. We want to see it for everybody. So I want to see basically all of these rectangles. God, these are terrible. I want to see this for Shauna Coxey. And I want to see this for, I'm going to throw a Canadian girl in here, for Alana. And I want to see it, make it a co-ed comp. I want to see it for Sean. I want to see all this stuff stacked so that I have all these scores. And I'll just like randomly color this stuff in for effect. I want to be able to compare this stuff top and bottom. And this just lets me see the standings overall, right? Standings are important. It's what we keep track of. And let's just say it's a 3-person comp, so we don't have to go much further than this. I should reverse this. I'm just gonna blur out Sean's. Sorry, Sean, I'm taking this away from you. Sorry, bud. So it's important to show this stuff, and I like that with these graphics, the same ones that Munich showed, it's all aligned, so you can see how each climber did compared to each other on each problem. And the other topic we were going to add in was, how do we know how many problems everybody's climbed so far? So if we look at, I'm just going to fake this in here. If we look at this current score, Sean and Shauna both have 2 tops, so they're tied for tops. But Shauna has 2 zones and Sean only has 1. So that means that Shauna is very ahead of Sean, right? He would be first, or she would be first and he would be second. But what this doesn't show is that maybe Sean just hasn't climbed problem number 4 yet. And that's where I want to start talking about, okay, give me that information. Tell me that stuff so I know what's going on. In finals, it's not too bad, right? We know that all the climbers come out and they all climb problem number 1 and then problem number 2 and then problem number 3. And they do that all as a chunk. So at worst, everybody's only behind by a single problem. You've either climbed it so far or you haven't. So for something like that, if you've got a full order of all 6 or however many climbers are in the round, we can start just doing things with color, just things to say, okay, this person's score is closed for this problem, whether it's outlined or whether it's got a fade behind it that shows you, okay, Shauna and Alana have done the problem, Sean hasn't done it yet. And when he finally has actually climbed the problem, we get some indication that, okay, he's climbed it, his score is locked until we go on to that problem. But that's something I really want to consider. If we go into another type of round where we're looking at like qualifiers, where there might be 5 problems, and because everybody's climbing through it 5 on, 5 off, you could have somebody that has climbed all 5 problems, somebody that's climbed 3 problems, and somebody that hasn't climbed yet at all. We have all that different information. So I want to see some kind of numerical indication that says, okay, Shauna Coxey's current score, 4 tops, 5 zones, attempts, and something that tells me she has finished all 5 problems. And then if Petra Klinger's score is currently 1 top, 3 zones, attempts, I want it to say, hey, she's only climbed 3 problems so far. I really want to know that on the screen. But I'm going to talk about formats for that in a little bit. And then the last one is guaranteed placing. So again, I'm not going to draw all the bars. We'll just show some names. We'll do a full 6. Let's pull some names out of here. Throw in some other Canadian girls. I need to spell, that's important. Okay, I got my 6 finalists, and there's going to be a bunch of rectangles. I'm not coloring these in. That would be the worst. The last one I want to know is, okay, cool. Has somebody already locked down a gold medal? And this comes up a lot in climbing, where you can be going into the 4th problem where nobody's climbed the 4th problem yet, but we already know who's won. Now, I want to know that stuff as fast as possible, and I also want to know maybe when somebody's out of contention. So when Stasia has achieved some kind of achievement, I want to get some kind of indication that says she's got this thing locked in. And so maybe that is, I've only got 4 colors, but maybe we're going to show at some point, hey, she's got a little medal. Imagine this was gold, and then this would be a gold medal. Right now it's a blue medal, so this is kind of trash. But I wanted to clearly show, hey, she has the gold medal now. Maybe at some point it's confirmed that Stasia and Shauna are locked in for 1st and 2nd. I want to see a little silver medal thing going on. I want to know that this is locked and good to go. Show me some indication that this is done so far, so I can start paying attention to the people that are still fighting for that bronze medal or whatever it is. I think that would be really cool. Going to screen real estate and where we're going to put all that stuff. There is a cool scoring app called Crimp Rocks. Their website is like crimp.rocks, and it's a mobile scoring thing, so you use it on your phone. I think that's probably what most scoring systems run off of. But the cool thing about it is that when you view those scores, if you view those scores from your phone, it's formatted for a phone-sized screen, so a vertical, kind of long, up and down screen. And that is kind of exactly what I'm looking for, because when we look at our screen, we want lots of space for the climbers. I want to have a clock. I like it centered. I want some space for the ads. Yay. I want maybe Shauna's name. Shauna Coxey's making a lot of appearances here. I want her right there. Sweet. Climbing going on over here. And then in finals, this entire section should be dedicated to scoring. All right? In a lot of sports, football, hockey, all that stuff, this section is dedicated to the scores and the clocks and all that. That's really cool. I think there's too much information that you need to see in climbing comps for it to fit in a spot like that. We need more space. So we're going to lock it all in here. The nice thing about climbing is that a lot of the time you only need space for one climber in the shot, especially in finals when you're down to 2 climbers. It's pretty rare for you to have both on the screen at the same time. This is a lot of space to show what's going on the wall. We don't need to to zoom in super close and fill the entire screen with a climber. We need that full body shot, which is normally zoomed out quite a lot, and you can easily fit a full human with some context from the rest of the problem in this size of the screen. So we can totally afford to give a column, a quarter, a fifth of the screen towards just scores. And that's where I can see all 6 men and all 6 women written down with their little graphic scores here all the way through. Maybe just show men or women and rotate through the 2, but I'm very confident that you could get both all on the screen all at once. So I think we should get used to giving up that part of the screen. There's other scoring systems out there. I haven't played with most of them, but if you can, if you run a scoring system at the moment and you can get it formatted to a narrow browser window, this is something you could start implementing right now. You can do this with the Crimp Rocks thing. Whoever's streaming your competition, give them the URL for your results. They can pull that into their streaming software and have this exist in your stream right now, right? If you use some other system, and if you close that window on your browser or however it looks on your phone, you can start to superimpose this on your screen and have this dedicated. And with very little change in your technology, you're making a way better viewing experience for everybody that watches your stream. So if you use one of those systems, do it for your next comp. Just try it. I'd be really interested to see how it looks. But we've talked mostly about finals, and a system like this probably wouldn't have enough space to show, for example, at like a Munich World Cup. Probably couldn't fit in all the info you need for like 113 however many climbers and qualifiers, right? That's a really different game. So trying to think of like another sport where you've got a long list of competitors, shifting orders, and that's where we're going to throw back to my limited experience watching racing, like NASCAR, IndyCar, whatever. Just going to clean this all up. And this is, we're going to switch to the very bottom of the screen and just try using a ticker. And I honestly don't know where the technology exists for this right now, so this is, somebody's going to have to do some work to make this happen. But when all the climbing's going on, let's say it's a qualifiers, we're going to have 5 men on the wall all the time. We're going to have rolling scoring for 10 active men at any time, always adding one and taking one out as they finish and start their rounds. So I think the appropriate place to put this is right along the bottom in a nice scrolling ticker where I just see all of the climbers in order, showing their current score, showing how many boulders they've finished so far, and also showing if they've already made it to semifinals. So maybe put it in a green rectangle that signifies this person has locked a spot in semifinals or locked a spot in finals. I want to see that info. And if we can figure out a way to connect our scoring systems and our broadcast systems to do something like this, I think this is the most elegant way of doing it. It's definitely much easier than pulling up the full screen graphic like we currently try to do if you do this for your streams, but at the same time it gives you the ability to see all those scores going across. So in my position, for the most part, I just commentate for streams, but I also try and help communicate between the streaming company, so the guys that come in and film it all, and the gym hosting the event. So I try and communicate between the two and make everything run a little bit easier. I've got a lot of experience on the gym side. I don't have much experience from the broadcast side. So for something like this, we need to basically get ourselves some kind of scoring app that has, I guess, maybe an API that can output to some kind of scrolling system. And that's definitely a next step thing. If there are scoring systems out there that have that kind of technical expertise or are willing to look into that and start trying something new where we can start to get results from Sean and Kruder. Again, my writing's friggin' terrible. But I want to see all their scores and their orders along here. And that's going to take some next level technology to get in there. But I think this is probably the best way for us to deal with those really long rounds. We have Canadian Nationals coming up this weekend, and you're going to see, again, hundreds of kids. How are we going to communicate all that stuff? I don't want to force families to get out a phone, try and find a scoring URL, and the scoring site is always going to be different for every single comp. It's going to be like a different service every single time. It should be a one-screen event, right? We want everything in one good place, and that's something we need to think about as we're streaming. How do we communicate more information through our stream so that no matter when you log into the stream, you have all of that information you need effectively right away. Let's stop forcing people onto their phones. Let's stop people trying to get information in the chat. Let's look for some kind of solution that lets it all be shown on the screen. And that's mostly just us spending a little bit more money on doing streams more often, trying new things, and trying to find some common ground between the gyms, the judges, the scoring services, and the streamers. And we'll gain that experience the more we do this stuff. I'd love to know if you guys have any opinions on this, if you managed to even watch the full thing through. This was kind of a one-take attempt, so hopefully it wasn't too awful. But if you have feelings about it, let me know. I think it's a good discussion to have. Otherwise, I hope you guys will tune in. I think there's going to be a stream for Canadian Nationals March 3rd and 4th. I think I'm commentating for that, but I'll find out later. If not, I'm still going to be watching. And hopefully we can maybe try some of this stuff. I really don't know, but these are things I'd love to see. So tune in for that. It should be on YouTube, I guess, March 3rd and 4th, Canadian Open Nationals. Other than that, I'll be back with an audio version of Plastic Weekly again next Thursday morning. So I hope you'll be listening. Otherwise, talk to you soon.